How's it going, everybody? So I wanted to just comment a little bit on the concept of universal basic income and any form of its derivatives. There's a lot of confusion as to the workability of such a system, I think, and I just want to lay out the terms in as simple phrasing as possible to make it clear why it tends to not really work. And the short of it is that there, some suggested systems, some through government, some possibly through voluntary organizations that seek to give, I guess you could say, some sort of monetary or maybe a digital form of currency value to various people just for existing. And the idea there is, okay, maybe this is a better alternative to welfareism, to doing some sort of like social safety net with food stamps or other kinds of things. Cut out the paperwork, cut all this other stuff, give everybody this basic kind of income and everything will be just dandy. Well, the problem there is because it loses touch with what money is and does. Money, in terms of the organic growth of a currency, that is something that arises naturally, comes through trade, where people voluntarily meet with others and exchange goods and or services and provide subjective value to one another in satisfaction of both parties. Right? If somebody gives somebody something and they're doing it voluntarily, typically one person is giving one thing because they desire what the other person has. The other person likes to say, oh, okay, you have what I want. And so that kind of meeting of the minds leads to people trading with each other and saying, oh, I want this, you want that, okay, let's move together. And of course, as I talked about in another video, the historical aspects of gold and silver denominations and how those arose, especially those who are richer wanted to show off their wealth, and so trade with those who are poor people who found different types of these rare materials would trade because they wanted to get their basic needs met. They'd trade people who had wealth for food and water and other basic materials, of which wealthy people had an abundance of. And you can't obviously divorce the money concept, or something being circulated as money, from meeting subjective values and creating wealth. And I've said before in other videos that when you're talking about wealth, what is wealth effectively? It is the efficiency or growth of efficiency in meeting basic human needs. What are basic human needs? Human needs, as far as survival needs are concerned, is food, water, shelter, and health. And when I say health, I'm not saying, of course, some right to a doctor. I'm saying the concept that people need to be able to take care of themselves, fix ailments and injuries, because obviously all this ties into not dying and feeling well enough to go and do stuff and be productive and be able to trade and continue to meet one's needs in order to live, ultimately. Obviously, if everybody had no needs whatsoever, you weren't going to die, you didn't suffer, you didn't have any wants for food, any wants for water, any bodily needs to be protected, then a lot of these drives disappear, and then we get into a different psychology of how people operate. But at a fundamental level, what is really driving people? It's meeting those basic needs, because if you don't meet them, you die. So when you stick money into a system on its own, some sort of token value, whether it's crypto or physical, paper or metal, you can't just seed those things out there without also considering what's being done by the parties. Because if people are not acting to create efficiencies and wealth, you're just moving around materials. You haven't created more things that help to fulfill and sustain people's needs. And so when you have basic income, you're effectively giving people some token value. Maybe it's paper, maybe it's crypto, maybe it's gold, or whatever it is. Whatever it is. At least if it was gold, then it'd have some other types of potential trade values. But if you're just giving somebody paper, if you're just giving somebody even, some digital currency without some sort of utility to it that provides a subjectively valued demand satisfaction. If you don't have that, then you're literally giving people things to expend those resources on, but there isn't anything being created by the person who is expending. You can give somebody paper, and that person can go and give that paper to another person who maybe went and picked food. We'll just be simplistic here, or primitive berries. And that person can give the person who has berries paper, and now that person has fewer berries and paper. And then the other person who just traded the paper for the berries now has berries. They consume that. The berries are gone. It's now waste product. The other person, though, if they don't have anything to trade, right, there isn't more wealth created. That other person who just traded that paper hasn't themselves necessarily met somebody else's subjective value needs. If you don't have people meeting subjective value needs, even if they are silly, ultimately you have a system that is dysfunctional because you start to lose the incentives for people to actually work and produce efficiencies. You're not producing efficiencies in providing base wealth and health. And eventually, of course, you're still in the same rut. You have a bunch of people who are incentivized to largely not do anything because why would they need to? They're going to automatically be given things and they can trade for those other goods. And what you see, of course, in these systems is not that, oh, everybody else in the market just deals with it and keeps their prices the same and just, whatever. You typically see a rise in prices because people respond to this rationally. They see it, their monetary trade value is being devalued because these other people are not producing anything of wealth. They're not meeting any subjective needs of others. And so because of that, eventually, if the people who have produced or work to produce goods that people need, that people want, if they're seeing that all their goods for sale are being taken away, but there's nothing left, there's no incentives for people to continue to transact because they're just being given this token money to trade, then suddenly it's like, I don't want to just give this away for nothing, and people start to raise prices. This is something that you can see so obviously in any program where the government gives out money just in a laissez-faire way, and I'll use that term to talk about government actually here, unusually, but the government's just like, here, right? You look at, for example, education. You look at all the money that was given out, the loosey-goosey loans and grants and all this other stuff. Well, of course, universities raise prices in response. Hey, they're going to get free and easy money, so let's just raise, free, I'm saying free as in freely given, not, no cost, but they're just going to raise prices to respond and start jacking up tuition. Why not? Everybody else is going to get money no matter what, so suck it in. Suck in the value. Don't leave things low. And they did, responding quite rationally to the glut of money being thrown in education. Universities all across the board began to raise prices. For-profit institutions and universities, nothing against for-profit, just the concept here of what's going on, started to come up and say, hey, come on in, we'll let you in, and they'll get the bare minimum accreditation so that they can get the federal money, and if you come in, you get it. And if the person loses it, then whatever, all right, you're out of your 40, 50, 60, 70, 80K in your undergraduate in the first year or two, and too bad you're a dropout at some podunk school that just happened to meet the bare minimum requirements to get the government funding. So that's the real, I guess you could say, Achilles heel to any system that operates on just giving people income alone. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work because those people are not necessarily creating value in the market that other people are subjectively valuing, whether it's goods or services. Now, it could be said that a better mechanism would be some sort of universal goods handout, maybe something material like, oh, someone decides to, with their own resources, give out lots of free, breads or, water to people. And I say free, of course, to me, no cost at the end user. Of course, there's a cost to it. But again, you have an issue there when if that's occurring, then it's, of course, undercutting those in the market who would be supplying those things, bread, water, whatever goods or products. So again, you're killing that industry. And if the people who are making those things are not having income come to them by trading value, then how are they paying the people who are working to produce the bread and water that's then being given out to everybody, right? Just, hey, everybody, maybe a philanthropic endeavor of a bunch of billionaires. And like, okay, we get together, we'll pay to have all these people do these things. Again, there has to still be at some point some exchange of value so that other people could then get paid. It doesn't just work. People aren't going to naturally just work for nothing. And when people see that others are getting value or being given credit for nothing, then it cheapens their hard work, because now it's like, oh my goodness, I had to slave away to produce all these things, and now these people who have done nothing, they've added no value to anything, are suddenly able to just be given this paper good, and now they can give it to me, and now all I have is paper. And what's that paper doing? That person didn't go and create more value for the people or for the person who is being exchanged with the person who's producing, and that's the fundamental problem. If you don't have subjective values being met, then you have a deterioration of the fundamental wealth of a people, and you also have a deterioration in the incentive structure for people to produce value. So it doesn't end up working. You know, there are lots of better ways to do these kinds of things. Certainly, if someone wanted to voluntarily create like a work and education program where people were able to work and have, you know, internships and get the skills they need for the future kind of thing, that could definitely work if the incentives were there and someone was doing that voluntarily. But the costs are always going to be present. There is no way around it. There's no way around to circumvent the fact that if you have things that are being consumed and you have people who are just consuming and they're not producing anything, you have a net loss of available wealth. And of course, the incentives that continue to follow from that pour into those who are producing, who start to get pretty resentful and react in the market quite appropriately. And as history has shown, those people who are not being valued with their goods and services tend to leave and go where their work and their product is valued, and there's a return on that, and then you have an economy that begins to flourish and blossom when people are truly rewarded for the value they provide to others. And again, to distinguish that from the labor theory of value, which is garbage, obviously, just because you work doesn't mean that you're providing value to other people, right? You could sit there and be like, oh, I'm digging a hole and filling it back in, and you're working, but that doesn't mean you're providing value. The core of economics is people providing value to other people, and that leading through that synergy and that synthesis of people's values coming together, a growth in wealth and a growth in efficiencies toward producing wealth. Because, hey, magically, there's this common theme with humanity that everybody wants to have to work less to get more. It's not that hard to figure out. People want to have efficiencies in their life, but you can't circumvent the creation of efficiencies by giving everybody an easy out. It just doesn't work. All right, so thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you all later.